actually on my dedication page of my book, I put my favorite quote. And that's a quote that I heard for the first time around the time when Rocco was being diagnosed. And I thought, this feels really important. And I don't know why, but I'm going to keep this in my back pocket. And it's a quote from St. Augustine. And it says, faith is to believe what you do not see. The reward of faith is to see what you believe. And it's a quote that makes me emotional even now.
Hello, everybody. This is Jess from 3D Learning Experts, and you're listening to the LD Experts Podcast, the show for busy parents who want to help their kids with learning disabilities, or as I like to say, learning differences, go from surviving to thriving. Hello, everybody. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Sara Intonato, who provides emotional healing for parents of children with autism. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you so much for having me, Jess.
My pleasure. So Sara and I met on Facebook through a high school friend of mine who is a current friend of hers. And I was so excited that Sara quickly agreed to come on our show and share her experience, strength, and hope about autism and how to work with it as a parent. I loved what you have on your website, breaking the glass ceiling around autism, one family at a time. That is so awesome. So tell us, what does that mean?
To me, what that means is looking around you and knowing that what's commonly done is not necessarily what your child needs or as far as your child can go. And I remember always knowing that my son was very smart. He's a non-speaker. He's on the spectrum. He has apraxia as well. And feeling like those around him, even those people who were supposed to be supporting him, maybe people who he met in school or experts, they didn't really see that about him. And because he can't communicate it verbally, the onus was really on me to keep raising the bar in terms of challenging him and supporting him and giving him things that I knew would help him. And very often on the journey of doing that, I would meet people who would say to me things that were almost cautionary tales like, don't get your hopes up. They only give XYZ in school, or they'll never approve that in your district. Or, when kids have autism, just get used to the fact that they don't sleep or this, that, or the other thing. And I never took any of that at face value because I always felt like I'm just going to parent the kid in front of me. And I'm not here to take on everyone else's stories or beliefs around what's possible based on their learned experience or their lived experience. I'm just going to parent the kid in front of me. And so when I say break through glass ceilings of autism one at a time, I really encourage parents to listen to their intuition. What is that telling them? Because nobody knows your child better than you. Mm-hmm. And society's imposed a lot of glass ceilings on individuals with needs and disabilities based on the little bit of experience that people have had in the past and not necessarily what they're looking at with the person in front of them right now. So my job is to help families really get connected to what do you want? What do you think is possible for your child? Great. Now that we know that, how do we get that and help them to tune out all the chatter they're hearing about or being told from parties that aren't raising their kid?
That's amazing. That's so wonderful because you do hear a lot of horror stories about experiences of autistic individuals in school. School seems to be one of the most challenging places for people who are higher on the spectrum with autism.
Absolutely. And that's certainly something we have had experience with. And we have a really positive school experience right now. And what I want people to know about that is it didn't just fall into our lap. Mm-hmm. It's something that we consciously created with a lot of effort and energy. And one of the ways that I felt really strongly in doing so was by letting school know this is not an us versus them situation. This is not you're smarter than me or I'm smarter than you and I want to one up you or tell you how to do your job. It was like, no, let's work together. Here's what I'm noticing works well. Do you notice the same thing? What do you notice that might help me? And really making an open line of communication because we use that line of communication every single day. And I think there's this illusion that families have that there might be a magic school district that's perfect that exists someplace, and maybe they should find it. I've met families who've moved across the country to find it and then ended up homeschooling anyway because they couldn't find it. And you are the solution. That's what I want parents to know. You are the solution. You're the person that's going to bring that solution to life. And I'm not going to lie to you and say there's not work involved in doing that. But ultimately, the only reason I did so was because I knew what my child was capable of. I knew what he deserved. And I was unwilling to settle for less. And I work with a lot of families who have those same beliefs around what their child is capable of and what they deserve, but they don't know how to get it. And they let the not knowing how to get it paralyze them. Mm-hmm. And so they do nothing and settle for the status quo because they just don't know what to do next. So my next step is helping them get unfrozen and really get clarity on what needs to happen. And sometimes that's having a meeting with your school district. Sometimes it's you going onto your yoga mat and meditating and giving yourself some quiet and getting a good sleep so that you have the energy to do this stuff. Because what I thought was parents aren't doing this because they don't know how to advocate or they don't know what next steps to take. And sometimes that's true. But far more pervasive is I meet families who aren't doing it because they don't have the energy to do it. And that was
or they don't know what to do.
I think that's part of it. They go hand in hand, right? Like when a family doesn't know what to do, they either are like me and practice really impeccable self-care so that they have the energetic reserves to go figure the thing out in addition to parenting a kid with needs, going to work, making dinner, maintaining the house. Or you're the parent who's so burnt out that hey, I want better for my kid. You don't know how to get there yet. And you think, well, this is just what it's going to be because I'm too stressed or drained to put the energy into doing the work and figuring it out. And that, when I realized that was far more pervasive, it was a real slap in the face to me because it really showed me how wounded parents of kids with needs often are because they've not been encouraged to prioritize themselves. And they've been encouraged to prioritize their kids, and they do powerfully. But at some point, there's a real bottleneck there where their lack of self-care, their lack of ability to go to the next level because they're so drained, because they're so burnt out or overwhelmed, becomes the fork in the road. They either have to admit that their child is not going to thrive more because they can't lead the way, or they have to go figure out what they need to do to become the leader. And for someone who's been a martyr for many years and never cared for themselves because they've been really busy caring for other people and telling themselves this is the thing they need to do, or being told by other people, even, this is the thing you need to do, they almost have forgotten how. And they sometimes question if they're even worthy of that time and energy. I spoke with a mom recently who has a child with autism who also has a genetic disorder, so a biological condition that challenges cognitive ability, motor planning, and that sort of provoked the autism diagnosis as well. And she said, how do I deserve to go take 20 minutes and meditate or take a walk when every day I see my kid with this genetic condition and I'm the carrier for it, right? So she literally used the words, it's my fault. So how do I deserve to go take that time? Shouldn't I spend that time figuring out the next thing for him? She actually had a binder. She showed me a legit binder of all the things she was going to do for him. There was no shortage of things she was going to do for her kid. She was an amazing, amazing human being, but had so much guilt around feeling worthy of the time and energy she needed to care for herself. And this was really interesting too. We realized together that it wasn't that she didn't know what to do. She knew how to do the food prep. She did it for her kid. She knew how to go on the treadmill and walk if it was raining outside, but she wasn't making the time because she didn't feel worthy of the time and energy. And that, I think, is sort of like the dirty little secret that I've discovered with a lot of families who have a child with a diagnosis. The parents sometimes don't know what to do to care for themselves. They don't realize that their stress and anxiety are impacting their children, or they haven't admitted to themselves that they don't feel like they deserve it. And so that's a big, dirty little secret to come clean with. And my job is to provide a safe, supportive environment for parents to have those types of realizations with someone helping them wade through the muck and find clarity and peace and an action plan to move forward.
That's awesome. And, I think we are taught to take care of others and not take care of ourselves. The younger generation is changing that, but the older generations, we have to relearn these things. I mean, I never took care of myself until the last 5 or 6 years, and my kids are grown now, but when I was raising them, it was all about them. So yeah, I can completely relate with that. So I wanted to ask you about the apraxia and the autism. Is that when someone with autism is nonverbal, is it apraxia always? Sometimes?
Not always. I've met some nonverbal individuals who don't have an apraxia diagnosis, and it might be that they've not been evaluated appropriately for their age. It might be that there's a different reason. There could be a medical reason behind it. There are all different components that can contribute to someone being a non-speaker. My son's is apraxia, and you'll meet people who have apraxia as well who don't have autism.
Yes, we have a couple of students who have varying degrees of apraxia who also have dyslexia.
Yes.
One of them, he has dyslexia, dyscalculia, and apraxia. And kind of like what you were saying earlier, well, the schools didn't help him at all. The mom has sued a couple of school districts to get funding to support him. Meanwhile, we are able to help him. And the current school district she's getting funding from is trying to avoid having to pay. But anyway, what I told the mom was, we can't help him talk, but we can help him learn how to read, how to do math, how to write, so that he can have a profession, because he's a very bright young man who just cannot speak verbally.
Yeah. And there are so many solutions for people. And if you're listening and you have a nonverbal or non-speaking child, some people prefer the term non-speaker because nonverbal implies that you don't understand words as well. And non-speakers often understand everything or a lot of the receptive language. And those skills are usually really high, but they may not be able to speak the words back to you. So they have to find, as you said, other forms of communication. My son uses rapid prompt method, which fulfills his sensory needs so that he can spell words and develop the motor planning relating to spelling and then eventually typing. There are ways now with AAC devices, the augmentative alternative communication devices, that can allow people to speak using pictures and typing as well. So there are a lot of solutions now, thankfully, at this time in history for parents to present their children. And one of the things that I've noticed is that schools often have some of them, but they don't have all of them, because to get something done in a school requires the board to approve it. It requires years and years of research. So they might be presenting solutions that aren't the most innovative or the newest, because schools don't want to be sued, right? So they want things that have been through decades of research already and whatnot. So one of the things I've done recently is to create a group, kind of like the support group I always looked for when I was a new parent dealing with this, but couldn't find. And it's called the Empowered Parenting Group, where parents who have kids with a diagnosis of any kind can come together and I coach them, but they also can connect and share solutions and resources that they've all vetted, which is incredibly important because they've realized that if they're expecting school or the doctor's office to be the thing that catapults their kid to new heights, unfortunately, more often than not, they're going to be disappointed. And this is why I say to all the parents I work with, you're the change maker. You're going to be the one who leads the way, who finds the solutions. And if you're a parent listening, I want you to know there are solutions for your child. Don't feel discouraged or like you're at a dead end. If you feel like you're at a dead end, you just haven't met the right people yet or found the right solutions yet, they're out there. Don't give up hope. And I think this is another kind of dirty little secret I've seen of parents to kids with needs, especially non-speakers who have looked to their school system or their doctor as the end all be all thing. They start to lose hope a little bit. And when that happens, they almost hesitate to try new things because they've been conditioned to believe this is just as good as it will get. And I worked with a 15-year-old non-speaker a year and a half ago, and his mom was really lovely. And she said school didn't encourage him using an AAC device, the iPad that can help you talk and communicate.
Really?
Because they said he didn't have the prerequisites for it. You put that in air quotes. Well, then what are the prerequisites? Why wouldn't school empower him to learn those? And I'm thankful that I've met people who work with other philosophies that would just say, you start where you start, teach it in an age appropriate way, even if it's the basics, but start with the basics and build those neural pathways. So if you're the parent to a child with need and you've lost a little hope and maybe you don't want to admit that, or you feel like you're at a dead end, I promise you there are solutions out there for your child. And as you spoke about, Jess, you may not be able to help someone talk with their mouth, but you can help them learn and communicate in other ways. And it's people like you who help provide individuals with confidence and empower them with tools to go and live a full life. I met a brilliant psychiatrist once who evaluates individuals with needs, particularly non-speakers. And she said, my goal is for everyone I evaluate to eventually grow up and become a tax-paying citizen. Right? Whether they're speaking verbally or not.
Right.
It didn't matter to her. I want to empower them with the tools that they need to go out in the world and live a life that they're happy about, that makes them feel joyful, that makes them feel like they're fulfilled and contributing. And I thought that was really a beautiful reminder. They may not do it in the same way as everybody else, but they're not capable of doing it.
Right. So does just one of your children have autism?
Yep. Yeah. My son, Rocco, who is 13, has autism and apraxia, as I mentioned. He's in 8th grade now. And my daughter, Aurelia, is 12. They're 18 months apart. And she is neurotypical. And they could not be more different as children. And I'm really thankful that I have those two different journeys because it allows me to tell parents, oh, your 12-year-old is just being a typical 12-year-old. That's not an autism behavior, right? Like that's just 12-year-old behavior. I have both. I see it. Yeah. Or this looks like a behavior that we want to take a closer look at and see if it's really serving your child or if we as parents need to be leaders here in reframing or redirecting it in some way to help your child thrive and become more independent. So it's quite interesting having two very different kids in every way, but I'm very, very grateful.
Yeah, that's great. Like I often tell people when I do consultations, I don't know what a neurotypical person looks like. My one child that doesn't have dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia was hyperlexic. So he was reading on an 8th grade level in like 2nd or 3rd grade. Wow. Yeah. Wow. So he was completely the opposite, but still not your neurotypical. And that's my son who was not told that he was autistic until he was 24. But yeah, so what are some characteristics that parents can look for in their children if they're not sure if they're autistic?
Look for them seeking out predictable behaviors almost exclusively. So there's something, I'm in my process of becoming certified in relationship development intervention, RDI, which is a modality of helping parents really be strong guides and leaders for their children. And one of the things that they take a close look at is called growth seeking drive. So growth seeking drive is something that will show up as early as 12 to 18 months in a child. And that's when, you sit your child in their high chair every day to feed them lunch. And one day they pick up their cup and they throw it. And it's because they want to see what will happen when they do something new and different. That's a sign of typical, I won't use the word normal because that doesn't even mean anything, but typical development, growth seeking drive, curiosity. Oh, there's that new thing. I want to touch it. Is that thing hot or cold? I want to feel it. What will happen if I throw my cup on the floor? How will mom react? All these different things that they're getting curious about. Whereas a child at that age with autism might gravitate to only using their one favorite toy that spins around. And if you try to break that pattern or give them a different toy, they might get upset or melt down. That's because their brain is not able yet to handle the unpredictability of a new situation, analyzing it, adapting to it. The executive functioning skills aren't developing typically. So they're going to go to that predictable thing over and over. It's why often kids will only want the same foods or the same textures, or they'll freak out. So I let parents know if you're fearing the meltdown, that's something to keep your eyes open to, because it means that your child might be seeking predictability in a really heavy way. Look for that. And I would say specifically look for it in conjunction with some delays, maybe delays around language or fine motor skills or even coordination. If you see those two things going together at any age, that can be a child's needing some type of intervention or support. So I would recommend, depending on how old they are, calling either early intervention if they're young, or speaking to a teacher or a doctor who you love and trust to see if there's a better way of supporting how their unique brain works. But certainly in older children, you might feel your antenna going up if they're not expressing interest in socializing, even with one friend, at an age where you remember always wanting to see your friends, or things, they seem to be highly sensitive to stimuli. And that could be anything from noise to crowds to lights, anything of that nature. Those are just some clothing, textures. Those are things that might put your antenna up. And if your antenna go up, I want you to promise yourself that you're not going to assume that anything's wrong. This is just that your child might need different supports in their life in order to thrive and live a full life. But it's not that there's anything wrong with you, and it's not that there's anything wrong with them.
Great. Thank you. So with your family, I know you surf. Does your son Rocco surf as well?
He sure does. In fact, there's a documentary film, a short documentary that's 22 minutes made about him called Rocco Up. And it's gone through many film festivals, won many awards. It's actually in talks with streaming agents right now. You can find it on Instagram, Rocco Up Film. You can go to roccoup.com. And it's a really beautiful story around how we just never listened to people who told us he wouldn't do things or couldn't do things. We just were committed to parenting the kid in front of us, believing in the potential that we saw in him and encouraging him to do that. And there were certainly times when he was in preschool where teachers and therapists told me he'd never have the core strength to, do things like going on a surfboard. And to that, I would say, do you want to see a video of him surfing? Or do you want to see a video of him riding a mountain bike, no training wheels? And their jaw would hit the floor because in their frame of reference, that wasn't possible. But we were so committed to just nurturing the process, one tiny step at a time, day by day, treating him as if he was competent and capable, believing that always, that he's gone on to do these things. And now he's 13 and just this past summer for the first time paddled into a wave by himself instead of one of us pushing him on the surfboard into a wave. And, these are things that my neurotypical daughter probably could do within the first week or two of surfing. And it took Rocco 9 or 10 years. But is that timeline wrong just because it took longer? No. Is it a normal timeline? No. It's fine though. He's still doing these things. So for us, that was always really important. I always encourage parents to know that your child can do anything as long as you're willing to throw your timeline out the window. And that includes talking for him. He's classified as a non-speaker because that's the language schools use. They use the word nonverbal specifically, but he talks more every day. Is it perfect all the time? No. But now he comes off the school bus and if I say, hey, Bub, how was your day? He'll say, great. And then I won't get sentences out of him, but I get an answer. And if he's upset, I'll say, oh, how are you feeling? He'll say, sad. And I used to get no words. So I always hold the door open for growth and evolution, but the timeline might be atypical. Mm-hmm. But I always have faith in that growth because I think the only time you don't see that progress or that growth is when you shut the door mentally on that being a possibility. If I had shut the door on him surfing when he was 4 and that physical therapist in school told me that he never would, we never would have put in the hours of practice. We never would have worked on putting him in a winter wetsuit. We never would have done those things. So I always want parents to know that your intuition, your belief in your child is far more powerful than whatever words the experts are throwing around about them.
Absolutely. Our children or ourselves will only reach as far as we believe that can be reached.
Yes, absolutely.
So how is he academically? Is that a strength for him or a challenge?
He is, I'm trying to think of the right way to say it that honors him. He receptively is very strong. Expressing it is his challenge. So he understands in an age-appropriate way, but can't always express it in an age-appropriate way. And that includes taking tests, writing assignments, typing, things like that. So I don't concern myself with him doing state testing or, how fast or how, I guess, average his progress in school is, but he loves school. He's an extrovert. He merges with the rest of his grade for some things, and he is in a special ed class for others. And he has different subjects like science and math and loves them. And his teachers are phenomenal in nurturing that. And I personally, at this stage of his life, am not attached to him keeping up with whatever else the eighth graders are doing. I care more about that he learns and is challenged every day in a way that works for him. So the cool thing is that he learns and expresses more every day. So that's where he's at academically. And I'm really grateful that he loves school and he's amongst people who challenge him, because for many years he would go to school and be given preschool homework when he was far older than that. And people not presuming competence and presuming that he understood. And he was getting really bored and would come home very upset every day. And now he comes home every day and he's happy and he walks into the house and he feels confident. And will he ever hold a pencil and fill in a multiple choice test that requires intense fine motor skills for him? Probably not. That's way harder for him than surfing. But would he take a multiple choice test on a screen and have to touch the answer? That he's capable of doing. So we'll see where he's at. But I love that he loves learning and is challenged every day. And when people bring up when he goes to high school, we're going to focus on life skills. I always say, well, that's a really broad term. What life skills are you focused on? Because that may or may not be the life skills that he needs in his life. So I never turn my nose up at life skills. I know a lot of parents who homeschool because they assume life skills are dumbing down their child's capabilities. But as we said before, with that psychiatrist I spoke with, if life skills involves doing your own taxes, then I think every kid should learn how to do that. But if life skills involves folding pizza boxes all day, every day, I think that's an amazing job for someone who feels inspired by that, for someone who wants to work in the pizzeria, for someone who loves food and learning or textures and working with their hands. But that's probably not the right life skill for my child to learn. And so I think, again, that open line of communication as a child learns and grows is really important and essential.
So I asked that question because before we started recording, you mentioned your kids were going to be moving out in a few years, which, right. Traditionally Americans go to college at 18. Right. So what do you have ideas of what his future might look like? Will you elaborate on, do you expect him to move out at 18 like an average American, or what are your goals and expectations for Rocco's future?
I have no idea what he will do, but what I'm really excited about is that his communication as a non-speaker is getting to the place where he can tell us. And when school had their transition meeting last year, I laughed hysterically because they meet in New York State. They'll start transitioning a 7th grader, a 12-year-old, for life after high school. And when they do that, they have their initial meeting, they ask me, his parent, what does Rocco want to do with his life? And I just laughed. I said, are you coming here to ask what any 12-year-old wants to do with their life? I remember being in college second guessing what I wanted to do with my life. I have friends who are now 30 and 40 figuring out what they want to do with their life. So what does that matter? What matters to me more is that he can tell you what he wants to do with his life at that very moment. So for me, it's all about communication. I think my husband, would be really happy if Rocco lived at home forever. He's just that kind of dad. I think he'd love my daughter to live at home forever too. I'm not that kind of parent. I loved living away from home, and I want my kids to have that experience if they want it. And I think that that's really my goal. Rocco's very extroverted. I can completely visualize him coming to us in a few years and saying, Mom and Dad, I don't want to live at home forever. That sounds lame. And for us then evaluating what types of schooling options are supportive of him. I have now heard that the Love Michael company, and I've met with some of the executives there, has started different types of autism-related housing for people who are looking for employment opportunity and continued learning. And they have a really phenomenal nutrition program. And it sounds like a really inspiring place to live. They encourage romantic relationships, friendships, independence. And if he weren't going to a traditional college setting, that's the type of environment I'd probably encourage him to live in, because the learning and growing is still encouraging. He's the type of kid that if you sat him in a house and had him watch TV all day, he'd get bored and dysregulated and upset. Mm-hmm. And he looks for fulfillment. And so I am I imagine my daughter will probably be the typical kid who goes to college, has the friends, does the sports, all of that. And I am imagining Rocco wanting that in some way too. And it'll just be a question of where he's at that time and how the options available can provide him. But I would far prefer to keep him at home if there were no suitable option and inspire his love of learning myself and piece it together however I needed to. But I can really see him wanting to be a strong member of the community, and whether that involves being a student in, college or grad school, or just going out into the community and getting a job that is fulfilling for him, he'll get to choose. Mm-hmm. But I think I do see him choosing one of those options of being out in the world. And he really likes that. And I think this is one of the things I have concerns about with students who homeschool, is that it's really important to get out there and be a valuable member of your community. And the parents I meet whose kids thrive in homeschool do that. They still get them in the sports teams. They still get them out with jobs and working part-time or volunteering and giving their child a chance to test out being that community member in different ways. And that's something that for Rocco is really important. So I see him doing that. And I've also had to really detach from what I want for him. I'd be the person who would want my kids to go to college and get a degree. My husband has had to detach from the idea that your kids may not live at home forever. Mm-hmm. And for him, that's really hard. So I think we as parents have to always toe that line of inspiring our kids, encouraging our kids and empowering them, but not imposing our preferences on them. Even when they're non-speakers, we want to give them the communication skills they need to tell us like, hey, I'm 18 now, and this is what I want to study, or this is where I want to work. And that would make me really happy and empowered. So that's my goal as a parent.
That's great. Well, I've looked at a couple of autism programs for adults, although my son is not severe enough, so they weren't the right fit for him. But it sounds like, that kind of environment is what you're talking about. There's a program here, it's called Meristem, and it is amazing, and they can live on campus and they learn all sorts of different skills. My son is actually in a grant program and he works there one day a week.
Amazing.
So, yeah. And so, and then there's also CTI, which I know is also in Denver, because Sammy went to camp for a month with their summer program for high schoolers. So that sounds like something that would be right up Rocco's alley, is to do a summer program.
And I'm in Long Island, so I know Stony Brook University is developing new programs for different types of learners. I heard of a university, I believe it was Kentucky, that has a whole living arrangement with a resident advisor who lives and supports those with needs like autism and disabilities to live independently from their parents and go to school and have a experience. So I'm really excited that these things are becoming more and more commonplace. It's no longer you go to college as a neurotypical student or you go to a group home or a group program as someone with autism. Now there's a lot more hybrid options and taking place. So I'm really excited to see more about those types of options for my own children.
Yeah, that's great. So tell us about your book.
Sure. My book is Emotional Healing for Parents of Children with Autism. It is a #1 bestseller in the autism category. It was just released this week. And it's the book that I looked for when I was a young mom with a 2-year-old who was just diagnosed with autism and another new baby, and wanting to know, how do I get through this in a way that allows me to approach life as a whole healed person so that I can be the best mom I can be. And what I found 11 years ago were lots of books about how to help your kid, nothing about how to help you, the parent. And so I had a background in yoga, meditation, spirituality, clean eating. So I just took good care of myself because that was my coping mechanism. That's what I knew how to do. And I didn't think I was doing anything special until about 10 years later, when we started filming the documentary. I picked my head up and started looking around at the population of families living with autism, and the parents were not thriving overall. And I started asking why, and I started thinking about how could I help them. And I realized that they need to care for themselves, for their own healing, and prioritize their own healing, because walking this path as a parent takes endurance, it takes strength and energy. And if you don't have those things to give, your child's only going to go so far before you have to tap out because you just have nothing more to give. So that's what this book is about. It's not just a book that's my story. I do tell my story in it, but it gives tons of tools to parents to start doing these things to heal themselves right now, without having to wait, without having to invest tons of money, but doing one thing a day to empower yourself, to heal yourself, to start realizing you're worthy of that. And doing that and noticing how when you have a regulated nervous system, the way you parent skyrockets. You become that champion, that leader for your kid in a way that you couldn't before when you were depleted. So this is what the book is about. And I love that the book not only shares how important it is to do this, but also answers the question of how do you do it? Because I think many parents, and even those parents who will see our documentary film who haven't yet, it's an amazing film. And after those 22 minutes, we had parents asking, well, how do I do that? And so for me, it was really important to give them a resource to get them going, no matter where they were, no matter how old their child was, even if they couldn't leave the house, they had no caregivers, how do they do this? And that's what this book is about.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've only been doing yoga for about 3 years, and meditating a little bit, started about 5 years ago now. I do it on a daily basis. And they really teach you how you need to take care of yourself first, and then you can take care of the rest of the world, your world, and heal anyone you touch. So that's awesome that you had that foundation before having children, because that, I really think that makes a huge difference. Yeah.
It did, especially in those moments of life that were really scary or traumatizing, those moments of life where you don't want to get out of bed because it seems too intimidating. I remember thinking, if all I do is get out of bed and do my yoga practice, it's the only thing that I know how to do. It's the only thing that I know will help. At least I know it'll help me a little bit. So while it's tempting to stay in bed and pull the covers over my head, I'm going to go do that thing, even if it only helps me a little bit. And I don't say it lightly. It probably saved my life at many different occasions. It certainly healed me from PTSD and anxiety and stress. And I'm so grateful. And in hindsight, I don't think it was an accident that I had so many years of conditioning around taking good care of myself before I became a parent. And I never knew that I would need it or value it as much as I did, but I'm grateful that it was there for me. And I talk a lot about that in the book. You know, yoga helped me when I was a college student with paralyzing anxiety. And then when Rocco was diagnosed, I remember getting on my mat thinking, this seems like a lot. I don't know if my practice will help me here too. Like, isn't this such a tall order? But I'm going to try. And it did. So I am only sharing what I know works as someone who's been through it, as a parent who knows what these other parents are experiencing.
Well, that's awesome. And thank you for being that for other people and leading the way and filling a gap that you saw when you were first finding out about Rocco.
Yeah.
Do you have any final things that you would like to share with our listeners?
The final thing is actually on my dedication page of my book, I put my favorite quote. And that's a quote that I heard for the first time around the time when Rocco was being diagnosed. And I thought, this feels really important. And I don't know why, but I'm going to keep this in my back pocket. And it's a quote from St. Augustine. And it says, faith is to believe what you do not see. The reward of faith is to see what you believe. And it's a quote that makes me emotional even now. And I'm so grateful that I had that in my back pocket and that I never subscribed to the beliefs that anyone else was trying to impose on me. But I had faith, and I kept the faith in myself and my child. And it really is what got us through.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Sara, for taking time to meet with us today.
It's my pleasure. Have a wonderful day.
You too.